All right, let's get to the second one. Lizzie, you found a video of some racist professors. Is this truth, lies, or shenanigans?
It's truth, unfortunately, and the point of reference is a lot of shenanigans, and it resonated with me because, again, I'm a professor. Not only am I a professor, but I am a professor in Washington, D.C., not too far from where this happened. This happened at Georgetown University, which is also in Washington, D.C. And Georgetown University, even though this happened in Georgetown Law School, which I never considered law school ever, but Georgetown, actually, if I had decided to go to school in DC, that would have been my top choice. And so this kind of pinched me when I saw this story. So earlier this week, it was reported that a Georgetown Law School professor was terminated and a second was placed on leave after a video clip showed a conversation between the pair that included reprehensible statements about Black students and their performance in the classroom. So my question, well, first let's go to the video.
Gotcha.
Yeah, let's go to the video.
A bit jumbled.
Yeah.
It's the best way I can put it. It's like, okay, let me reason through that, what you just said, kind of thing. Yeah, unfortunately. And you know what? I hate to say this. I end up having this, angst every semester that a lot of my lower ones are Blacks. Happens almost every semester. And it's like, oh, come on. Get some really good ones, but there are also usually some that are
some really good ones.
Some really good ones. There's some really good ones.
Yep.
So I feel bad.
I think it's the really good ones comment that pissed me off the most, but go ahead.
So let me just, before I post the question to, my panel, my co-host, let me just give a point of reference. There was some miscommunication online. People were thinking, oh, this was a private conversation. No, it wasn't. This conversation happened at the end of a Zoom class, okay? So students are barely getting out of Zoom. This conversation happened at the end of a Zoom class between two professors. What a lot of people don't know is, as a professor, the majority of us are required by the university to record our Zoom sessions. We have to do it, for legal purposes, but also to give those students who cannot attend the class, who are absent that day, an opportunity to go back and watch the class. So this conversation was a part of a Zoom session that they were still recording. But then subsequent to that, the Georgetown Law School posted this Zoom session on the Georgetown Law website for 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
And so, yes. And so that's how it got out. A student posted it on Twitter, but it had been on the Georgetown Law website for 2 weeks. So all students were privy to this conversation. So this wasn't private. Wow. None of this was private.
Wow.
So my question to the panel is, should she have been terminated?
Let's start with Gianni, because I know Robbie doesn't like to get the racist one first.
Thank you.
I wanted to mention, it said the Black Law Students Association also called on the law school to conduct an audit of the Sellers, I think that's the professor's name, her last name is Seller. Yes. Sellers grading and student evaluation. It also wants the school to assess and improve its subjective grading system, blah, blah, blah. So I think that I want to, because to terminate her, yes. But because I know, okay, hear me out, guys. Because what she's saying, I understand the terminology. She's saying, like, calling Black people one of them and stuff like that. She still has some maybe antiquated ways of thinking. But I think that we need to, this is a school. So as long as she has continuously failed Black students, or as long as she has Black students that are not doing as well, maybe we should look at, like they said, the grading system. Why are you, not the grading system in the school, but her, why is it a record that only Black students are at the bottom of the academic?
So you're sort of saying this feels like a Band-Aid.
Yeah, I think that we need to kind of look more into that, and then if if it shows that she's kind of the one that's doing it, like she's kind of the one that's failing these students, or she's not giving them attention or things that they need, maybe that's when she should be fired.
Interesting.
But
like that
yeah.
Okay. Robbie Rock? Good. That's a good point.
I really like Johnny's comments that, you know, this is an older person who might be using some outdated terminology or ideas, but it seems that her comments were based on patterns that anecdotal patterns that she has noticed over time. So whether she has a bias that has impacted the grades of Black students, that's the key issue for me. So if there is a history of her giving lower grades to Black students, that's a big issue, and I'm glad that that is part of the review that they're undergoing. One of the things that I found a little funny too about this story is that the gentleman in the conversation, David Batson, he's also been suspended.
I didn't
if I'm not
understand
mistaken. So I don't really understand that one because he is a peer, and when you see him, he just kind of, to me, it's more of an uncomfortable confirmation, an uncomfortable reaction when someone says something that's just kind of a little bit off, and you kind of go, oh, that's, to me, that's what his reaction was. So should he have confronted her at the time? Maybe, maybe not, but those types of confrontations can be uncomfortable between peers. But at the very least, I would hope that it was reported to the dean of the department. So that's a detail that I don't have. Do I feel that it's appropriate for Sellers to be suspended? Pardon, Liz?
No, I said it wasn't reported. None of this was reported until after the video came out on Twitter.
Yeah, and part of my job is some basic media production for academic events. We record all of our academic lectures, and man, you don't post raw footage because that's it. Rule of thumb, people are unaware. So they will have conversations when it's not part of the official session thinking that they're safe, they're in the clear. No, there's always a camera rolling. Conduct yourself like there's always a camera rolling.
All right. Yeah. So my thoughts are, I mean, I was initially like, oh, hell yeah, she needs to be fired and dude needs to be suspended. But I'm going to tell you, I think you guys have kind of changed my mind a bit, so I appreciate that. Because my thought is that, I still think she needed to be fired or suspended.
There just needs to be some.
I think she needed to be fired or suspended because, but ultimately, it is sort of a Band-Aid because we're not really addressing the problem. We do need to investigate if there was a history of racist behavior in terms of, like, you know, looking at her grading system. Was she going specifically after Black people and things like that? And if she was, then yes, maybe definitively fired, suspended first, definitively fired after you find out what she's doing it. But fired for the comments does feel like they're just doing it to save face. You know, the Georgetown is just, you know, something ugly just happened, you know, and it's out there in the public, and now they need to save face, so let's fire her and suspend this dude, and then there's really no solid reasoning behind it in terms of but initially my initial thoughts were fire the hell out of this woman because I didn't like her comments at all. But I'll say you guys kind of softened me to it a little bit. Go ahead, Lizzie.
I agree.
So my reaction is still fire the hell out of her because I think a lot of what she was saying was her own personal bias versus the reality of what is happening at Georgetown law.
It's hard to say that it didn't affect her grading. I mean, it's just the thinking the thinking, right?
But the thinking, but that's her responsibility.
Right.
But I don't even buy into what she was saying, given that, and for those who aren't familiar, who are outside of the DC area, who aren't familiar with Georgetown University, Georgetown University, Georgetown Law, in terms of ranking, is one step below Ivy League. It's a very prestigious academic institution.
And it's not exceptionally diverse at all. Okay.
So it's not exceptionally diverse, but also they're not just letting people in on a quota. Okay? Yeah. Certainly not Black folks in on a quota. And so for the class of 2024, I did my research, I looked this up. Class of 2024, Georgetown Law, 576 total students in Georgetown Law School in the class of 2024. Of that, I would say roughly between 44 and 50 students are Black. And so the likelihood that she had more than 5 Black students in her class, each semester,
Good way to
is
break it
minimum.
down.
Yeah.
And so you're
So her
telling me
3 Black kids were probably doing. She's saying out of the 3 Black kids, all of them were doing bad. Is what she was.
all of them were
Weird.
low. All of them were the low ones. All of them
No,
were
there
the
were
low
some
ones.
good ones. There were some good ones.
Even if that's the case, you got to figure out why.
But that's cringy.
That's
you
what
can't
I'm
say shit
saying.
like
Even if
that.
that's the
Their
case,
job.
even if that's the case, you trying to tell me there weren't any low ones who were white?
Right.
White.
There weren't
Exactly.
any low ones who were Asian?
There had to be
There
at
weren't
least
any
3.
low ones.
Clueless.
There had to have been. And you're trying to tell me that Georgetown University is admitting students, their minimum GPA for the class of 2024 was 3.86. Okay, that's pretty high. You're trying to tell me that you admitted students into your law school, only Black students, because that's what she's talking about, who were jumbled in their speaking, who couldn't keep up? To me, I call bullshit. So that's why I say I think this is a personal bias that she had, especially if she's thinking about this over the summer and she's planning her syllabus and she's going into the semester. At Howard University, Howard is an HBCU, predominantly Black. So I don't have a lot of non-Black students, whether they're from the US or countries outside of the US. I don't have a lot of non-Black students in my classes, but I do have a lot of international students. Do I go into the semester thinking, damn, these Nigerian students? No.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
And if I did, that's a personal bias with
problem.
me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know better.
And it's probably affecting how you're grading
during a Zoom session.
Yep.
Have I had private conversations about my dismay about all of my students and how they have been educated before they get to me? Absolutely. Because I think the US education system is shit. But I don't break it down based on, oh, well, she's from Nigeria. She's from Eritrea. Like, no, that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening.
Yeah.
So I think this was a personal bias with her. And she needed to get out of the classroom because, like Gianni said, like Neo and Rob said, it begs the question, so what has her grading been like in the past when she sees those 2-3 Black students sit down in her classroom the first day?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like immediately in her head, she's like, "Oh, they're going to be the sorry ones. They're going to be the weak ones." It's
exactly. So
she's already stereotyped them in her head as soon as they walk in the door.
And for that,
listen, I'm often frustrated by the what my students come into my classroom with. But a lot of that isn't their fault. It certainly isn't based on race. And that's how she broke this down. And so that's where my problem comes from.
All right, let's get to these comments online. So Mike Wolf, I like what Mike Wolf has to say often. This kind of racism results in self-fulfilling prophecy. If you expect less of Black students, you tend to find what you're expecting when you're grading. Which is, of course, very subjective. Grading is very subjective. An investigation, this is Jacqueline Robinson, investigation should definitely be done, but there may be students who require remedial action. What is this professor willing to do? And that's what I'm saying. If this were true, fine, figure it out, and let's help them, Kevin Dax, has anyone looked into the work? Okay.
I don't buy into the argument that it's only her Black students who are the low ones that need some remedial help. Like, I don't buy that at all.
I don't buy into that either.
All right, Kevin Dax, has anyone looked at the work the same students produce in their other courses? And Mike Winter says, this is absolutely what can happen in classes at majority white institutions.
Listen, I went to a PWI, okay? A lot of my students are shocked when they hear I didn't go to a HBCU. I went to a PWI, and I wouldn't change anything about it. I love the University of Colorado. For graduate school, I went to NYU. However, I had students my freshman year who made the comment that I was at Colorado because of affirmative action. I was like, you better get the fuck out of here.
Really?
What was your GPA when you graduated? Actually, I just got off the plane from Finland where I got a scholarship. Where were you? Where's the affirmative action?
I thought affirmative action was old school. You're not old at all.
No,
like that's
there's still affirmative action.
No, that's affirmative action still around, girl.
But affirmative action isn't just race-based.
Oh,
affirmative action also goes into legacies. I mean, Donald Trump and what's his name? George Bush got into their Ivy Leagues because they were legacies. Because they had family members who went to the university before them. That's affirmative action. It's a form of affirmative action. But no one wants to talk about that. But yeah, I had people, students at University of Colorado questioning me. And I'm like, y'all better get out of my face freshman year. Don't make me get kicked out freshman year because I have to check your ass.
All right. Great hot topic, Lizzie. Thank you very much.
Just got here.
Truth, lies, shenanigans.